Hello everyone and welcome to the lecture on the main function. The main function is used mostly to place statements that we don't include in our function definition. I wanted to quickly show you how we can use the main function. When you read various programming books, you will see the main function, and that's why I wanted to quickly cover this main function. Basically, when we define our function, we put our code, and everything else that we don't want to place in our function definition is placed in the main function. We define another function called main, and we place all of our statements which are not included in the function definition in this main function. And later on, we'll call this main function and it will execute and in turn call all the other functions. Let's look at an example. Let's say we have a function that adds 2 to a given parameter. Okay, this function accepts, let's say, 1 parameter, and it will simply add 2 to that parameter. Okay, so x is equal to x plus 2. That's our function. Let's add a couple of print statements. Let's say print before the add to function is called, then the value of x, then we have our function x plus 2, and then after the add to function is called, value of x is then x. So before the add to function is called, value of x is then x. So far we know how to do this, and we can call our add to function and then pass any attribute, let's say 3, and we get before the add to function is called, value of x is 3. After the add to function is called, value of x is 5. And similarly we can say add 2 and then pass, let's say, 7. Run it, we get that. We know how to do this, right? Next, let's see how we can use the main function. So we can define another function called the main function. Let's define it here. Define main. Then we can say x, let's say x is equal to 3. Then we can say, we can call the add to function and pass x, and next let's say print we'll print a line, and let's say x is equal to 7, and then we'll call our add to function and then pass x. Let's print a line here also, and then let's define our x, let's say 22, and then let's call our add to function one more time and then pass x. So in this case we have our main function here, right? The add to function, which is the function that we care about. And then anything else, we added it in the main function. So without this main function, what we have done was add2, call our add2 function, and then pass 3, right? Run it, and then we see the result, and then we call our add2 function, and then pass 7 here, and then we get our result, and then finally we call our add2 function and then pass 22, and we get our result. But instead of doing all of that, what if we did this? What if we defined another function called main, and then we passed all our attributes, and then we call our function at the same time, pass our attribute and call our function, and finally we can call this main function once. We can call this main function and it will execute all of the statements. So when we call our main function, it will go here and execute this. It will set x to be equal to 3, and then it will call the add2 function, which will in turn add 2 to the value of x, and that will give us 5. So it will, when we call this add2 function, it will execute, it will call, we are calling this function, so it will execute whatever statement we have within our add2 function, right? And then we have x is equal to 7, then it will add, it will call the add2 function again and execute the statements within the add2 function, and so on for each of our x values. So let me run it and show you. So here we have, right, before the add2 function is called, let's say this times 15. So now we have, before the add2 function is called, the value of x is 3, and then after the add2 function is called, the value of x is 5. Then we have our line, and then we called x is equal to 7, and it called the add2 function. So we have these two statements because we are calling this add2 function, and that executes the code within the add2 function. Then finally we have when x is 22, after the function is called, we get 22 plus 2, which is 24. So this is the main use of the main function. So whatever is not included in the add2 function, we place it within the main function, and we can call the main function once and it will execute all of that. So that's the main use of the main function. One thing I want to mention is that the value of x in the main function is not affected by our add2 function. That's because we are only referencing x, which is an integer, right? So when we say x is equal to 3 here in the main function, x references only an integer. And we know that integers are not mutable, so we cannot change the value of x in the main function. Okay? So calling this add2 function does not affect the value of x that we define in our main function. So just to show you that, what I'm going to do is, let me just copy this part. Okay, Command C, Command V. So we define our main function, add 2 to it, and then we'll call our main function here. And let's add a couple of print statements before and after this add2 function is called. So before our add2 function is called, let's print before our add2 function. Then let's say x, then we have our add2 function, and after that let's print after our add2 function and then x. So when we run this, so the value of x is 3 before our add2 function, and we call our function our add2 function, and the value after calling this add2 function will still be x, will still be 3. Let me run it and show you. Here you see before our add2 function x is 3, after our add2 function x is still 3, right? However, when we call our add2 function, these two statements are printed and run. So before the add2 function is called, value of x was 3, and then after the add2 function is called, the value of x is 5. That's the add2 function. Okay? And the value of x in this main function is not affected by the add2 x method, because integers are immutable objects and we cannot change the value once we define it. Okay, that's important thing to mention. Similarly, if we add that to all of our x values, we'll get the same result. So before we call our function, we can print before our add2 function, then value of x, then print after our add2 function, value of x. The same is true for all the other x values. So I included the same print statements for each of the x values before and after we call the add2 function. Okay, when x is equal to 7, print before and after the function is called. Okay, let's run it. So we get the same result. Before our add2 function is called, the value of x is 3, and then we have our add2 function call, which is these two statements here, and then after our add2 function is called, the value of x still remains the same, 3. In the second example, the value of x is 7, it still remains 7, and then 22 in the third example. Okay, it's important to note that the value of x is not affected in the main function. Great. So this is how we can use the main function. Just to recap, we use the main function to place statements that are not included in our function definition, and by simply calling the main function, we will be able to execute our initial function. Thank you everyone, and see you at the next lecture.